and welcome to this LinkedIn Live Lightning Chat with Jeremy Dean from Riders and Elephants. It's wonderful to have all of you here joining us for this live stream. And of course, welcome to you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for making time.
Well, thank you for having me along today and for inviting me to the event that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh, we're definitely looking forward to that one, Jeremy. You are known for the emotional culture deck. It's something that's sort of taken LinkedIn a bit by storm. And then more recently, you've come up with a CX deck or a customer experience deck. What are these card decks and what's the difference between them?
Yeah, wow. First of all, to be known for this game is a scary thing because I didn't intend to be known for anything. And it's humbling that so many people want to talk about it and want to share it. So that first off is, I'm really grateful for that and to be here. So thank you. The CX deck and the ECD or the emotional culture deck, and now the wellbeing deck, which is a game we launched and co-designed with Tamara Buckland last year, are card games to help people express themselves at their core.
Mm-hmm.
They're card games to help unlock emotion-led conversations, either about the culture of your team, about customer experience and relationships, or your well-being. And so all we've simply done is taken, it sounds strange because I don't think they're overly complex, the games. I've designed them in a simple manner so anybody can play them, even young children. They're simply games that involve labels, emotion labels that you sort through and you identify which emotions apply from a customer perspective, which emotions you want your customers to feel and not feel. And I think that's the core of any great customer relationship or experience, is understanding the emotions you want to provoke or promote or manage. Yet I don't think we have those conversations because we don't have access to the labels.
Interesting. And how does your game or your deck help with that?
Well, simply that we give people the words, we give people the labels.
Mm-hmm.
From just a pure expression point of view, when you may do this, you might ask people colloquially, how are you doing? Or how are you feeling? And you tend to get back happy, sad, glad, or mad. If you're lucky, you get a layer below that. But we just don't have the labels, the access to the words to describe how we individually feel. And so we give people those labels. So in the customer experience deck, for instance, there's about 80 odd emotion labels that you can sort through that describe a whole range of emotions, both pleasant and unpleasant, high intensity, low intensity, to allow you to select and choose the ones that you believe apply to your customers or to yourself. And then behind each of those labels is a story. Because if I want my customers to feel inspired, then I can share a story about why I want them to feel inspired. And if I don't want them to feel alone, then I can share a story about why I don't want them to feel alone. And within that story is meaning, is understanding, is connection, is a reason why. And those things create really great connections within a customer experience team or within any team around the world.
I really love how you connect, emotions with the ability to unlock conversations. And I'm really interested to hear more from you about how the CX deck can help us unlock customer conversations in a business context that I guess is very often not very emotion friendly.
Yeah, that's a really polite way of putting it, I think. So well done. So where it started was a lot of the customer experience work I was doing seemingly a long time ago now, like 6 or 7 years ago, following a lot of the amazing work from like the customer value proposition work and Brian Solis's work and customer journey mapping. There was always a part for emotion, but it was sort of like a little slither at the bottom of a map, or it was the last part of the conversation. And that struck me as peculiar and continues to strike me as peculiar because emotion governs how we behave, whether we want to believe it or not. And so all I've simply done is bring up that conversation about emotion to the front, because I believe if we can come to agreement as an organization, as a brand, as a team, whatever it might be, on what we want our customers to feel and not feel, we can start there. Then we can have a really solid and profound conversation about how we might help our customers feel the pleasant things or the positive things, and how we help them manage the unpleasant or undesirable things that will come up naturally in any experience or interaction. So the basis of our games are starting with emotion, not finishing with emotion, not that being a tag on going, now that we've designed this experience, how do we hope they feel? Generally in customer journey mapping, you've got just positive or negative on a spectrum. We don't get to the granular label, which doesn't really provoke any profound moments to go, yeah, these are the things we want our customers to feel and not feel. And Maya Angelou's quote has really inspired me, or did at the very beginning of this journey. People don't remember what you said or what you did. They remember how you made them feel. For me, the whole concept of customer experience can be summed up by that one quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I really enjoy that quote, and I think it's one that's sort of floating around in our orbit quite some time. Been floating around for quite some time, and it certainly brings, I guess, to the forefront what our practice is all about. Is we're centering on the customer because experience is what keeps them, what engages them, and I guess what brings meaning to them. I'm wondering, again, as we're circling around emotions and experiences that are very intangible, and we connect that with games and play and I guess activities that, again, in the boardroom or at the executive level aren't always endorsed or feel sometimes very far away from senior decision-making positions. What's your experience with bringing gameplay to the executive table? How have people responded?
There's two pretty clear camps. There's some who don't agree that games or play should be around that conversation or around that environment, and the others who say, yes, I've been waiting for this because it gives us permission now to do something we didn't want to do. I purposely use the word game and play and how I talk about our tools, or now the games, because I think it invites people to lean into it and have a play and experiment. I think experiments are so vital to any organization, any team, any customer experience and program of work. We need to run a whole bunch of experiments, and you can have fun with experiments and you can play with them. So I think it's really important, but a lot of people do believe that we shouldn't be using games, or it's too serious to play games. But games can be serious. Games don't always have to be fun. I think if you asked any professional athlete, they would say there might be an element of fun within it, but those games are serious. So I think we've got to be cautious not to think that games doesn't mean serious, because these games are deadly serious in a sense. When that's the wrong phrase or word, sorry, but they're extremely serious. They have profound meaning within them. They're important. There's an element of fun that can be an output of it, because it's having a conversation you either normally have but in a new way, or you've never had before, which makes it accessible. And so I think it's incredibly important to bring gameplay into what we do, but not be afraid to say that games can be purposeful and meaningful and serious. Games don't mean silly or not profound.
In your opinion, what do games help us do that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. I've been thinking about this more and more as I continue my own game making journey. These games create connection. So my games in particular, Riders and Elephants games specifically help create connection, because when everybody has a pack of these cards, we get a chance to have a say. And I'm really interested in how we reduce groupthink and herd mentality. And in all of the custom experience work and brand work I'd done in the past, often the alpha male or alpha female in the room dominated any group discussion. And if you're working in a team and a team is responsible for creating or delivering certain experiences, it's important that everybody has a say, and it's important you can learn from each other. But I found there wasn't a way to give everybody a say, and there wasn't a way to allow the people who don't normally speak up to speak up. And so by giving everybody cards that give people permission to have their say and contribute, whereas if there's one person stood around a giant post-it note or a flip chart, then often there's one or two people who happen to be the loudest or most confident in the room that end up having a disproportionate say. So the way I've designed our games is that everybody has a pack, so we can reduce that and we can we can get a more diverse perspective, and we can hear more stories from more people rather than the same old voices always dominating the conversation. So within the game, there's connection.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important when it comes to working in a team environment to deliver a certain outcome or experience or redesign how you engage and interact with your stakeholders.
100%. I can totally relate to that. I guess people still go, oh, how do I go about playing a game? Do I just walk into the room and say, let's play a game? How do you approach that topic?
Sometimes I do. I think it's an element of reading the room a little bit. If everybody is very serious and to the point, then sometimes I'll come at it with a little bit in a little bit more of a jovial way. But I don't think there's a magic formula for it. You simply lay the game out and you invite people to play. There's an invitation with any game. There's an invitation. There's instructions that you follow. I love it when people don't follow the instructions and they decide to go down a different path and create their own rules or their own parameters to play within. I think that's when our games, Riders and Elephants games, get really interesting. When people go, no, I don't quite like that actually. Let's use it this way.
Interesting.
That for me is really exciting. But I think it's inviting people in. So you lay the games out. That instantly creates intrigue and curiosity. From a gameplay perspective, one, it's because you're not looking at a big post-it note on the wall again with a million smaller post-it notes around it, and people go, oh, we're doing that again, like deja vu. I've been in these sessions before, etc. So automatically we're sort of we're reversing assumptions and helping people see that this game or this experience might be slightly different. I think my approach is to simply lay it out, invite people to play and explore.
Yeah. Nice. I love that. I love the boldness and the dedication to gameplay. Is there one thing I've been wondering is how we can use a game that centers on customers' emotion by talking among ourselves. Like, at what point does the customer actually come into the conversation?
Yeah, awesome question. So when I first designed the game, the customer didn't come into the conversation, or it doesn't technically in this game to begin with. It can be used that way. And what I meant by people hacking it is the core question, or the beautiful question in our game, is how do you want your customers to feel and not feel? So that's very much about us as a team or an organization exploring the answer to that question, but disconnected from the actual customer. So it does rely a little bit on going, who is our customer? How well do we know them? But one, it nudges empathy straight away, I think, because by asking that question, we have to go and stand in the shoes of our customer to go, yeah, actually, what would they want to feel and not feel? And what would happen if they did feel this? And what would happen if they don't feel this? So we are nudging an empathetic perspective just by asking that question. But we don't technically go and ask the customer that question. And for two reasons. One, I think there's already some really great tools out there, some voice of the participant and voice of customer survey tools. And I wasn't interested in designing another digital tool that just replicated that. Seemingly that's done really well by some great platforms. But two, I often think also that customers, even myself, we don't know what we don't know. We don't even have the words to articulate what we want sometimes. So sometimes having this conversation separate is a good thing. Not to say it always should happen separately, but at least having the conversation distinctly from the customer is not necessarily a bad thing, I don't believe. But what I do love is when people take our cards and sit down with customers.
Nice.
Yeah. And for that reason, like I touched on at the start, which is we don't have the words to describe how we actually feel, because we know happy, sad, glad, mad, angry, maybe. So a couple of users of our game have taken the cards, sat down with the customer and said, hey, based on your experience, pick the cards that you felt when you engaged with us. The customers then pick the cards, and then you ask a really beautiful, simple question, going, tell me about that, as you point to one of the cards. And then the story comes behind the label which they've picked. So they might have picked out, I felt unwelcome. And then you can say, okay, tell me about that. Why did you feel unwelcome? And so we then start to hear about articulated either articulated or unarticulated needs and desires and experiences, but using the label that they've chosen as the center point for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love how you bring up stories as the actual powerful tool, for change and insight. And at the collective, I guess we come together as a community because we believe there is a need to shift focus inside organizations from profit to people, to actually change that culture from a profit focus to a people focus. How might your approach to play or your card game help us do that?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it definitely does do that. To be honest, I can't. People would look at me and listen to me and be quite cynical if I said they are going to shift you that way. But they're a nudge, because if we are moving to a people-focused lens, or even to be more purpose-focused, if it's people-focused to begin with, we need to understand people. And to understand people, you need to understand their emotion. And although the customer experience deck isn't about understanding your people, so your employees' emotions, you can use the game in that way, and we've got the emotional culture deck for that. But I think you need to start by having that discussion. And I think it's also important because of emotional contagion.
Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so emotional contagion exists. It's real. It's a strange time to be talking about it because of COVID and what's happened with COVID. But you catch emotions like you catch the common cold. Whether you want to believe it or not, you catch them. They're invisible. You catch them fast, and you might not even know it. But because they're contagious, it's really important when we think about, especially frontline customer experience or frontline employees, because how your people are feeling will impact how your customers are feeling. And that, it takes a moment to wrap your head around and go, okay, well, if my people are turning up in a certain frame of mind, or they're feeling anxious, alone, incapable, confused, afraid, then more likely the people they're interacting with are also going to feel that.
Yeah.
And so that's going to have an impact on the customer experience. And if your job is to mold and to guide and to design customer experience, you've got to take the human element of it into mind. And often we think of the tools and the mechanisms and the platforms for customer experience, but we don't think about the human who's delivering the experience, and their emotions will impact your customers. So I think this game can help start nudging that, because we're going to start having a conversation about emotion to begin with, which isn't happening in most organizations around the world. It's happening in some very inspired ones who are doing world-class leading stuff, but it's not happening. It's not the norm.
In the audience, a question came up around sort of why we don't have words to describe how we feel.
Such a good question, Brendan. And I can only give you what I know about why it hasn't, and some people that I admire, but it's a learned skill. Not all of us are taught this. It's a societal, in my belief, it's a societal issue or challenge. From what I gather, because I've been working with more and more schools, and we have practitioners who work with schools with the emotional culture deck, it's a topic that's becoming more relevant and becoming more deliberate. But generally speaking, we're not taught it. I know I wasn't. I was brought up in a family where it wasn't spoken about. We weren't taught the labels. We weren't taught how to express ourselves. And so at a family level and a societal level, we're just not taught this. And so I'm on a bit of a mission on this, as a side mission to the rest of humanizing workplaces through our games, is to help young kids and school kids develop the vocabulary and help express themselves. So when they get into work in a team environment, they're more able to express themselves and find the words to describe how we feel, what they feel. And then equally that applies to then how we think about the people we serve. So either the customer, the stakeholder, the community. So yeah, for me, education is the wrong word, but it happens it's not happening at a community and a societal and educational level. And I think that's where we need to start. So the next generation of people coming through have the words to be able to express themselves and have these conversations with the people they serve.
So true, Jeremy. And I love sort of the direction that you're taking and trying to create meaningful impact that really starts shifting the way in which we, I guess, look at the value of emotions, of being able to articulate that, and how we use them to serve the customers, colleagues, and communities better that we're here to serve. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been a really inspiring conversation. I am actually looking forward to our seminar on the 16th of June, where I know you'll share more about, I guess, the customer experience deck and how we can use it tangibly to start conversations inside organizations about customer, and how we might use that to start shifting culture inside organizations too, which is really, really exciting. Now for the audience, Jeremy was also really generous and has shared 50 CX decks for the first 50 people register for the event. A lot of them are already gone, but if you're listening to this to this stream now, I'd encourage you to check out our website. The Baroka's just put the link in the chat, and we'd love to see you there and hopefully play with us in the CX deck. Thank you, Jeremy. It's been a real pleasure. And I look forward to hearing more from you soon. Kia ora.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah.